Have you ever wondered what games you should keep or you should lose? Find out here at Purge Reviews.
So here's what the game is going to look like set up. If you look here on the board, it's going to tell you we're going to put your influence. You'll put it there. Space races down here on start. Your military ops, your VP, doesn't matter which side. Your action resolution, your turn marker, and DEFCON will start at 4. It's easier if one person sits here and one sits on the other just because you have your reference there, but it's not 100% necessary either. The USA player will start with the Roman autonomy game card in front of them, and then you'll take the mid-war cards, you'll shuffle these up, and you'll deal 9 to each player. Once they have their 9 cards, you're ready to start playing. I'm going to give a quick overview of how to play this game. So you're going to have these cards in your hand. Each of the cards can be used for a few reasons. You can play for the ops, which we'll get into in a moment, or you can play it for the paragraph at the end. There's USA cards, there's Russian cards, and then there's cards that work for both because they'll have both of the colors on it. If the USA player is to play a card, say I want to spend it for the ops, that's fine. The paragraph will not apply because this is a USA card, or I could just choose to play it for the event. If I'm the USA player and I want to play a USSR card for the ops, I may certainly do so, but the event will occur every single time. Then if I play a card that could be for either of us for the ops, the event will not occur. Okay, so there's a few things. If there's an asterisk on the end of it, that means once this is played and the event is done, it comes out of the game. If it has an underline on it, that means it sits beside the board and likely has an ongoing power, so that means it's going to continue to occur. So first thing you do each turn is you're going to move the DEFCON status up 1. Beginning of the turn, you do not have to do so, and then you deal out the 9 cards. The very first thing you'll do is you'll choose a card from your hands called the headline phase, and you will play that card just for the paragraph. Whoever has the higher number will have initiative, and their card will be played first. If it's a tie, the USA player's card will go first. So everybody will reveal one of these at the same time, and the paragraph will occur, and it will come out. Then, for the next 7 rounds, you will take turns with the USSR player going first, and then USA, you will play a card from your hand. Once again, you can play the card. Say I'm the USA player, I can just play it and do whatever the paragraph says. Very easy. If an asterisk, it comes out of the game. I can also, if I have a USSR card I definitely don't want to play because it's too powerful, I can put it into the discard pile, and I can attempt to go up on the space race. Each one will tell you, this one says it has to have at least 2 ops, this one has 3, so I'm fine, and I have to roll my dice. On a 1 to 4, I move up. So I got 2, then I would move up, I'd flip over, saying that this round the space case card had been played. You only play 1 per turn, there's 2 turns to the game, and I would get this power, move 1 influence from 1 country after the headline phase. So, if the Russian player does not move up, I will have that power. If I were to get up here, the first player gets 2 victory points, second one gets 1, and if you get up here, you draw 1 card and you get 3 victory points. Once the player moves up, then the power no longer applies, but if they're behind you, then it would. So the trickier thing to do is when you play a card for the ops. So this is pretty simple. It has a 2 ops. I can add 2 influence to any country that I'm already in or adjacent to where I want. So I'm in Ethiopia. I could simply put 2 in Kenya. Now the reason why it's going to be 1 is because I have control of it. If you don't have control over it, then it will be on the white side. For example, Saudi Arabia requires 3 in order to have control of it. So that means I have to have at least 3 influence and 3 more than my opponent. So if my opponent has none there, then I only need to have 3. If they have 1 influence there, I would have to have at least 4 in order to control it. So Ethiopia and South Yemen would be controlled because it only requires 1, and the opponent doesn't have any. In Somalia, they don't have control of it. It requires 2, and USSR only has 1. So with the Ops 2 card, I could simply add 2 to a location I'm already in. So I could have made this 3. I could add 2 here, or I could add 1 to multiple places. So maybe strategically I want to add 1 to Kenya, and then maybe I would add 1 more up here in Sudan, which would give me control of that. Very simple. Or I could play this for a realignment. So realignment is going to work a little different. It's going to cost you 1 of your op points. I've got 2. So let's say I wanted to do a realignment in Somalia. I don't have to be there or adjacent to it, but I want to try to do a realignment here. I'm also going to get 1 to my roll for each adjacent country that I control, which is the Sudan right now, and plus 1 if I have more influence. So they're also going to get 1 to their roll. So that's going to kind of wash out. Then both of us are going to roll the dice, and they rolled a 6 and I had a 1. So I did not have a higher number than them with all my bonuses. So my realignment would fail. If, for example, I had rolled 4, and let's say they had rolled 1, I get +1 for the adjacency, so my 4 would become a 5. They have more influence, they become a 2, so you would take 5 minus 2, which would be 3, and I could take away up to 3 influence. They only have 1 there, so that would simply come off of the board. I would not be able to add anything into it. Okay, let's reset the board, and that's how realignment works. I should note that I can do another realignment because that was just 1, so I could attempt another one since I played a 2 ops card. Let's move to coup. So a coup is going to work a little bit differently. A coup is going to allow me to not only take your influence off, but be able to add some more of my own. So let's use the example of Somalia. I'm going to try to do a coup here. My ops is 2. I would roll my die, it's 5, which I would add to the 2, so my 5 becomes a 7. So I have a score of 7. You would take whatever the number is here and double it, 4. So 7 minus 4 means I can get rid of 1, it's 3, so I can get rid of 1 of his, and then add 2 of my own. Now, if this had occurred in a battleground, then DEFCON would go down. Now, if DEFCON goes down to these, you can no longer do coups or realignments in the Middle East. If you ever push this all the way down to nuclear war, then you would lose the game. If it's in Ethiopia or Somalia, which has a little lightning bolt here, that means you turn over the top card of the deck. If it's a 1 or 2, then the DEFCON level would go down. If you had turned over a 3 or a 4, then it would not go down at all. But if you had turned over a scoring card, you would perform the scoring card before the coup happens. So now that we understand how to use opt cards, we understand how to use the events, realignments, and coups, let's talk a little bit about how to score points. There are a few ways for the game to end. Like I said already, if you are the one that pushes it to nuclear war because of the DEFCON level, then you will lose the game. Another way to lose the game is if your opponent gets 10 points, and adversely, you would win the game if you get to 10 points. And the points are a tug of war. So if a U.S. player has 5 victory points and Russia scores 3, you simply 1, 2, 3, go back 3 on the board. Let's say you were at 2 and you lost 3 victory points, or USSR gained 3, you go back 2, and then USSR would gain 1. So it is a tug of war. Scoring is both cards are going to kind of work the same way. You're going to have presence, which means you have control of at least one country there. Domination means you have control. So presence means you control at least one country in the area. Domination means you control more non-battleground, which are the ones without the purple, and purples combined than your opponent. And you have to have at least one of each. So if you don't control one of each, which I do not here in Africa, I have 3 non-battlegrounds, then I would not have domination. But let's say for an example, I did have control of Kenya, then I do have a battleground and a non-battleground, and more than the Russians, they don't have any, so then I would have domination. That would score me 3 points. Now the last one is control, and that will score me the most points. If I happen to have control of all of the country, all of the battlegrounds, and more than my opponent, then you would have control and you would score 4. So that's where these battlegrounds can become very, very important because they can lead to control, which is the most points. Now, you also have the strategic sea lanes, which is up here. This is new to this version. If you control this, then you can double whatever points that you would get from scoring the scoring card. So having control of strategic sea lanes can be super duper important. Now, one caveat to Africa that's not in the Middle East is that if you control Ethiopia and Somalia, which are these 2 right here, and you control more African countries than your opponent, you get an immediate win to win the game. So that's a little change in this one. I think in Twilight Struggle there was one in Europe, but this one you want to get Ethiopia and Somalia. So these are 2 countries you'll be fighting over a lot, which goes with the theme. Then what's going to happen is after everybody's played their cards, you're going to have 1 card left over in your hand. You are going to see if you made the military ops. Now, whenever you play a coup card, your military ops is going to go up based on the amount of ops that you played. For our example, we played 2 op card, so the USA would go up 2 in military ops. Now, wherever the DEFCON status lands, let's say it lands at 3, then you would score victory points for your opponent not getting that. So USA did not make it to 3, so that means USSR would score 1 victory point. But the USSR didn't make it at all, so the US would score 3, which would put them back 1, and then US would add 2 victory points. So you would check the military ops at the end. After the end of the first round, you will take the deck that's left over a mid-war and shuffle it in with the late war cards, and you would deal these out after increasing DEFCON. You play 2 rounds of the game, and if an immediate win hasn't won, then it's whoever has the most victory points at the end of the game. And that's a quick overview of how you play Twilight Struggle Red Sea, Conflict of the Horn of Africa.